Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Exotic Astrology. And after many requests, Kṣaṇāti ji is back again into Exotic Astrology. And today he's going to share with us the most awaited topic of astrology. One of those, in fact, remedies for Saturn and Rahu. And he just told me that if the viewers of Exotic Astrology and other places like this series on remedies, then we are very soon going to do it for all the remaining seven planets, but we will start with Saturn and Rahu. All right, so welcome back, sir, once again to Exotic Astrology. Nice to see you back. So the stage is all yours.
Namaste, Bhabajeet. It is so good to be back on Exotic Astrology with our spiritual community here discussing remedy. Bhabajeet Ji and I were just discussing, yes, it's great as Jyotish is a tool for us to help us understand our karma, but remedy is really the most important aspect because it helps us improve our karma, help limit the malefic aspects of our karma, and encourage the auspicious manifestations. And if you're talking about planets which normally affect us in a malefic way, those are the most important planets to have a beneficial relationship with. So people who have Saturn, Mars, Moon, and Rahu, Ketu all in good position, these are having planets that can act difficult, but they're acting in a more auspicious manner. So, and hopefully if you apply remedy, no matter what difficult position your planet is in this lifetime, by applying thorough remedies throughout this lifetime, then you will be born with a better position in the next lifetime. Yes, Bhabajeet, do you agree with that?
Perfect.
Yeah. So let's start with Saturn. Now, the best day to honor Saturn, before we start with the remedies though, when is the most appropriate time to perform Saturn remedy? First of all, people in Saturn Mahadasha. Also people in Saturn return, which means Saturn is returning to its natal position. Also the Sati Sati, which means Saturn is transiting your natal moon position. And of course, if you're a Capricorn or Aquarius ascendant, good to do the Saturn remedies as well. But these are the main things which we look for when applying the Saturn. But again, we're going to talk about two different types of remedies, because sometimes we do planet for a remedy which we already have a positive relationship with to further encourage that positive relationship. And other times we do some very specific and special remedies with planets we have debilitated relationship with. Not because we want to increase the power of a debilitated planet, because that will cause difficulties for us, but we want to remove the debilitation effect. So when we're working with planets in good position, the remedies are a lot different than working with planets in difficult position. And that's just something I want to make clear. But as we get into the Saturn remedy, Saturn Mahadasha, Saturn Antardasha, Saturn return Sati Sati, Capricorn and Aquarius ascendant. Now, the best day to honor Shanaishcharya, is on Saturday. But if you're in Saturn return or Sati Sati or Saturn Dasha, then you can honor Saturn every day. It's not like, because Saturn is always affecting you. So for the people who are being lightly influenced by Saturn, then you can work for Saturn and only Saturday. But if you have heavy influence by Saturn, then I encourage these remedies every day. Excuse me, my throat's a little hoarse. Now, the next remedy I would like to apply is color remedy. My favorite color remedies for Saturn are black and blue, but they have very different type of energy. So if your Saturn is in good position, like exalted Saturn or something like that, or Saturn Capricorn, Saturn Aquarius, then you should wear dark blue. then you should wear dark blue, because this is the natural color which gives Saturn more power. This is the natural color which gives Saturn more strength. If your Saturn is in a difficult position, like it's in debilitation or enemy sign, then I would encourage you to wear black. Black, because it's known to protect you from negative energies. So Saturn, to increase power of Saturn with remedy, if you have good position of Saturn, you use blue. But if you want to avoid some of the over heavy effect of Saturn, then you wear some of the black as a protection.
And black is also the color Libra, right? And Saturn gets exalted there.
Exactly. That's an excellent point. So they're even more so. And so if you notice, you're going to a public space where there are going to be a lot of people and they're going to be in all sorts of states of consciousness, it's a good time to wear black. So that way you protect yourself from not being influenced by all the, if you're at a concert, all the people drinking around you and everything like that. The next thing is whether we want to increase the power of Saturn or to reduce the malefic effect of Saturn when we look at remedies. But I always encourage working with the Saturn yantra. For all of the planets, I like working with the yantras. You can email me, or maybe I will post in the comments of this video the yantra, but if I can't, you can email me for it. And basically, we honor, when you look at the yantra, when you're performing the mantra, it increases the power of the mantra. So the yantra is a very integral part of the sadhana process. Now, when we get into Saturn mantra, I do not recommend Saturn mantra as remedy for everybody. Nilanjana samavasham ravi putram yamagrajam chayamartanda sambutam tam namami shanaischarayam. Now, this remedy is known to increase the power of Saturn and connect to Saturn, what you don't necessarily want to do. But there's a deva which resides over Lord Saturn, and that's Shiva, Om Namah Shivaya. So when we're working to reduce the malefic effect of Saturn, I say perform 108 Shiva mantra, Om Namah Shivaya. But if someone has a weak Saturn and they need to strengthen their Saturn to help their career, to help their marriage, to help their relationship, to help gain some stability in their life, then they do the traditional Saturn mantra I was performing just a moment ago. Now, for the Ayurvedic remedies, when it comes to Saturn, Saturn is a Vata planet. So usually people with Saturn-related challenges have too much Vayu, and Rahu is also a Vata planet. So when we get with the Ayurvedic remedies, Rahu and Saturn, we are trying to pacify Vata. My herb for Saturn is the same as my herb for Rahu, and Rahu is akin to Saturn. They're both related to each other because they can create tamasic influence in the mind. So you have to reduce the tamasic influence in the mind. So my favorite herb for Saturn is the Jatamansi. Jatamansi, what should be taken a half teaspoon, simmered in milk or milk substitute, and you can add a little bit of jaggery, and you drink this 1 hour before bed, and it purifies your mind while you're sleeping. That way you wake up in the morning on the right side of the bed without any tamasic thinkings. So this is very good herb for Saturn and the preparation method. But also Saturn has a connection to Asti Dhatu, which is the bones. So oftentimes people with strong Saturn challenges, like Saturn in the 8th house, they have problems with their bone, like the osteoporosis, arthritis, and things like that. So you have to do things to strengthen their bones. So most of people on this path are following the vegetarian diet, but that diet can be difficult for the bones. So you have to go, because the broth, the soups that are made from the bones of the animals is way more healthier than the meat. Especially when you're looking from an Ayurvedic perspective, Dr. Lott always thought of the use of meat as a medicine versus a food. And for people who have bone problems, bone broth is really good. But I have some vegetarian alternatives as well. Number one vegetarian alternative to support the bones for Saturn is the pearl basma. This is the ground up pearls. So you can find this at an Ayurvedic pharmacy, but it's the ground up pearls, the pearl basma. This is a very, I forget the Ayurvedic term for the pearl, but the ground up pearl medicine, which is called the pearl basma. But this you only need a small amount, 1/4 teaspoon taken with honey. And then warm water. This will increase the strength of the bone. There's also another rock called the mica. You can take the mica basma. So you take a little 1/8 of a teaspoon of the pearl basma, 1/8 of the teaspoon of the mica basma, and mix it with some raw honey. Then you take the raw honey and you eat the raw honey and drink the hot water, and your bones will become very, very strong. You no longer will have the suffering so strong of the arthritis and the osteoporosis. So those are some Ayurvedic remedies. And then the last couple remedies I'd like to give are more, some of them are traditional and some of them are more practical. From a traditional perspective, Saturn is called the Shudra, which means the servant. So the greatest remedy in honor of Saturn is for us to be of service to the people who need it most. See, oftentimes when it comes to the concept of service, we're in service to the family, we're in service to the charity, we're in service to the average person that we're walking about of the street. But Kṣaṇāti has to do with the lowest caste. So the greatest remedy to improve your karma with Kṣaṇāti is to be in service to the homeless people, to the elderly people, people over 80 years of old, to the orphans, to the babies that have been abandoned by their parents. Also the homeless people. Also the drug addict and the alcoholics. Also the mentally handicapped and the physically handicapped. But this is written through many of the ancient writings about remedy for Saturn, is to be in service to this group of people who really need that help. And the most extreme example, which I have yet to do, but saints have been known to do this, is to clean the dirty feet of the homeless person. It's a hard job, but it's good remedy for Kṣaṇāti. And then the last remedy, which I wanted to mention before I want to hear about any insight from Bhabajeet, is what I call the virtuer checklist. Because it says in the ancient sutras, in the slokas, that no spiritual change or growth manifest without Kṣaṇāti. So we think Jupiter is the planet of spiritual manifestation. We think that Rahu and Ketu are the planet of spiritual manifestation. It specifically states that the spiritual change manifests through the work of Shanaischarya. So the virtues which Saturn is helping us work on as Kṣaṇāti, the slow mover, well, the number one virtue must be patience. So people in Shani Mahadasha, Shani Antardasha, Saturn return, Sati Sati, their patience is always tested in some way. But there are lots of other virtues as well. Saturn tests our acceptance, our ability to accept what we can't control, because they call Saturn the great controller. So Saturn helps us surrender to what we cannot control. And Saturn also gives us the virtue of humility, which means the surrendering of our ego self. And that's why the Sun and Saturn are enemies, because the Sun is the healthy ego and Saturn is the humility of the ego. But the remedy which I wanted to explain for this is kind of an idea, which is if we self-test or self-challenge ourselves as much as possible on a daily basis, then Saturn might not have to work as hard. In other words, if we're doing the work, then we don't have to make the Graha do the work, because we're doing the work and that just makes the Graha happy. And what planet to make happier the better than Saturn? So this means think about patience. Think about all of the things in your life that make you feel impatient. For example, doing the taxes, going to the grocery store, talking to the relative that you don't want to talk to, doing the vacuum, cleaning the toilet, going to the doctor's office. Because Saturn represents the mundane world, which is all of these responsibilities and activities that we have in the mundane world that we don't necessarily feel like doing. So one of my greatest practical remedies for Saturn is to write all of these things down that kind of test your patience and make you feel impatient, and put them on a list. And then on Saturday or another day, you force yourself into those positions. You force yourself into everything on that list. And eventually, the divine will come in. One of my old friends used to tell me, say, it was seeing Shiva at the grocery store. It's easy to see Shiva in the temple. It's easy to see Shiva in the Ganga River. It's easy to see Shiva in all of these spiritual places. But how about when we're all doing our mundane responsibilities and duties, paying our bills, going to the grocery store and going to the doctor? Shiva is also there, but we sometimes forget in this moment. So again, even if acceptance is the virtue, you have to practice to accept the unacceptable, because we can't control all of these things. I used to joke around back in the elections before the new president that all of the fans of Donald Trump should go to the Hillary Clinton fundraiser. And all of the fans of Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders should go to the Trump fundraiser. Why? To improve your karma with Saturn, because you have to practice to accept the unacceptable. You have to practice to accept what you can't control. And trust me, I do not want to accept who my president is, but what choice do I have? So these are just some of my remedies which I wanted to discuss for Saturn. Humility is the last virtue I wanted to mention. This is a nice checklist to have. There's always people in our life who take our ego down a notch. Maybe it's our mother, father, or our older sibling, or our younger sibling, or our aunt or our uncle, or some of our closest friends who like to joke around with us. And although it hurts our ego when these people take our ego down a notch, it actually improve our karma with Saturn because it creates humility. So if someone makes a joke about you that hurts your ego a little bit, and instead of getting angry, you are able to laugh about that, that's very good to improve your relationship with Saturn as well. So these are just some of the different layers of remedies. Oh, one last layer, and I save it for last because it's not the most important, but gemstone. I almost never recommend the blue sapphire gemstone. I usually okay. So the blue sapphire gemstone first is only suggested for someone who has already completed Sati Sati and Saturn return and Saturn Mahadasha at least once. So never give a blue sapphire to anyone who hasn't completed all three of those cycles of shunning. So that means I never give a blue sapphire to someone who hasn't finished their Shani Mahadasha. See, but because my Shani is in Sagittarius, Mula Nakshatra. So even though at the end of my Saturn Mahadasha, I would like to give myself a blue sapphire, because Saturn is not in that strong of a position in a Jupiter sign, even though I'm ruled by Aquarius and it's in the 11th house, so it kind of makes up for it a little bit. But so I have lots of different theories, but again, don't even consider blue sapphire till someone has completed all of their rotations of Saturn, especially Sati Sati, Saturn return, Saturn Mahadasha. And you know in Gemstone Remedy how they usually recommend that the gem will touch the skin? Not for blue sapphire. Only if the Saturn is exalted or in Aquarius or Capricorn. Otherwise, I will put barrier between the gemstone and the skin. Because what we want to do is the gemstone to capture the challenging energies from that planet, but then not be reprocessed back into you. Because one of the things that Dr. Ladd, my teacher, said, he says, the planets are always looking at us. And if you see, and if you're wearing like a blue sapphire, instead of all of Saturn's energy affecting your whole body, it starts to focus its sending its energy into your blue sapphire. If that blue sapphire is open, it gets filtered partially and then gets reprocessed into your body. So just be careful about open-ended blue sapphires unless you have Saturn in a very good position. In general, the only gemstone I recommend for people in these stages of their Saturn work is the amethyst gemstone. It's much more mild, it's much more subtle, and it's best when Saturn is in a debilitation or enemy sign. So it's really good when Jupiter is in, when Saturn is in Aries, Pisces or Sagittarius, or Leo or Cancer. Those are the best positions for the amethyst. So I hope those remedies were interesting. Thank you for allowing me to share that with you, Bhabajeet. I hope some of those remedies were beneficial for our community.
Yeah, definitely. In fact, there's so many new words which I've heard, not heard it before. And the points which you made long back, I had heard that there are two things. One is detachment and the other is indifference.
Yeah.
It looks very similar if you see externally. And the problem is, whenever you say to people that you should be detached, people think they are talking of being indifferent. Detachment means that there are so many things which you control or you won't, but nothing controls you basically, which means you can stay without something. That's what detachment is. And then indifference means you are not even concerned about something. For example, we may be indifferent to some colleague in the company, because we may be feeling that that person has anyways no role to play in my life, so I'm not interested in what's going on in his or her life. But detachment means we like somebody or we love somebody, but we are not dependent on that person to become happy in our life. Of course, if that person is there, then it's great. So they say that if Saturn is well placed in somebody's chart, then it gives detachment. And if Saturn is not well placed, then it can give you the opposite. It could give you indifference. And Saturn is also the Karaka for detachment and indifference. That's why. So one of my gurus used to say that you should be detached but not hard-hearted. It's very difficult. It's like a thin line. You should be affectionate but not attached. That's the statement. So if Saturn, we want to remedy Saturn, then it's very important that we do not be indifferent to people who have given us so much in life, especially family members or relatives or friends or our loved ones. And that doesn't mean we should not be detached. That does not mean that we should be attached. It means that we should do our part, and then we should not expect things back from people. That's the problem when Saturn is not well placed. There's a lot of expectation, you see. Oh, this person did not give this back to me, I expected this stuff, because sun is the planet, like around which everybody rotates and revolves. So everybody wants to be like the sun. So to the degree we want to be like the sun, that we want everything to be for ourselves, we think that the world revolves around us. To that degree we will spoil our Saturn. And that is why I always make it a point, that whenever somebody wishes me, in my birthday or anything in general, then I always make it a point that I reciprocate to my capacity. Of course, I may not be able to do it in the same way, but I try my best to reciprocate. So that's one very big remedy for Saturn, in my opinion, that we should try our best to reciprocate with others, because Saturn, as we know, gets exalted in Libra, right? So Libra is what, basically Libra is the sign of balance. So that's the law of the universe, that you get something and you give back, you give something, you get back. So that should be maintained properly when we do any remedy for Saturn. And the biggest remedy for Saturn, as I always keep saying, is to be disciplined, to have a proper schedule. One of my gurus used to say that you should have a place for everything in life and keep everything in that place, which means you should have a time slot, because Saturn is also time. It is Kal, as they say, no? So not wasting time, and knowing that time is very valuable, because when you say that you do not value time, or when you say that I waste a lot of time, what does it mean essentially? It essentially means that you don't value yourself. When you say that, oh, I just wasted 1 hour doing nothing, or just doing thing, seeing, watching Facebook, or watching unnecessary videos in YouTube, or going through Instagram and staring at the photos of the opposite sex, when this is how you people waste time. So that's essentially like saying, because the time which we have is an essential part of our existence. So when we say that I wasted time, so it means like saying I wasted myself. It's exactly that. So we should reduce the wastage of time, and we should also keep the place very clean. As you said, Saturn is the Karaka for toilets and all this. And one of the indications I heard long back for bad Saturn, as they call, mm, is that The moment you enter somebody's room, or the moment you enter somebody's toilets specifically, you get a very bad smell. So now, of course, you cannot expect great fragrance in a toilet, but at least it should not be that, you are not able to you are not able to even go inside there. So that's an indication that the people who are staying there, they have a very bad Saturn. So we need to make sure that the those places are very clean, at least we can try our best to make it clean from our side to whatever extent possible. And yes, being disciplined and having a schedule, doing things on time. Whenever you say something to somebody, make sure you do it. Because many times it happens in our life, we take things very casually. That, for example, suppose somebody said, "Okay, I want to talk to you," and then what do we end up saying? "Oh yeah, 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 we will talk to you today. We will talk today." And then we forget, and then after 2 3 days we may remember, and we call, and then that person say, "Oh yeah, yeah, no problem, we can talk today." But that tendency gets very deep rooted in us, and that gets transferred into all other areas of your life. Your boss tells you something, and then you are like, "Oh yeah, I will do it," and then you don't. Your wife or your husband tells you, "Do that, do this." "Oh yeah, I will do it, no problem," and then you don't. So we need to make sure that if we are being negligent in one area of our life, we will be negligent in the other areas of our life also. And and that's something very beautiful which I've learned in Germany. At least Germans are very punctual about time. So when you say I go at 2, it means exact 2.0. It doesn't mean 2:15 or 2:30. So yes, these are some of the things which I would share. And now let's discuss on Rahu.
Everything that you discuss, I just wanted to comment, resonates with my own experience with Saturn. As I think you know, I'm an Aquarius ascendant, and then Saturn is in Sagittarius in the 11th house. So I'm in Saturn Mahadasha and Saturn return. And two things you said really resonate with me is no expectation. And I have Sun in in the 10th house with Mercury, and then I have Venus and Moon in the 9th house in the Libra. So, like, I've become very much service oriented in my work. So, like, I'm always teaching on YouTube, but I have no expectation of receiving anything in return. And but because I have Sun in the 10th house, I still wish I was invited to these to teach at the astrology conferences. And I was invited to Sedona, but I wish I was invited to some of the ones in Europe and India and stuff like that. But
This is something which many YouTubers, they struggle, I think. It's an unnecessary struggle because many times I have seen that, for example, I saw in YouTube that this competition was going on between T Series and PewDiePie, who will win the highest number of subscribers, some 70, 80 million or something like this. So when I see such funny competitions, who will gain more subscribers, I feel this is defeating the very reason you started a YouTube channel.
yeah, I just wanted to share free knowledge without any expectation. But because my son's in the 10th house in career, I want to travel the world and work in different places as well. But Saturn has taught me just to surrender all of my expectations. It's taught me to surrender all of my desires and just be in service. And in that, I find complete peace. And then the second thing you said, which also completely resonated with me, is the routine. Because earlier in my life, even though I'm ruled by Saturn, it's in an enemy position. So there's some room for growth. So before I went through Sati Sati, Saturn return, Shani Dasha, I did not have a lot of routine. But as I go through Sati Sati, I wake up, I do the chai, do the sadhana, read some Brihat Parashara or Shastra, then maybe I'll do consultation, then I'll have lunch, then I'll do other consultation, then I'll cook my wife dinner, then I go to bed then I watch the baseball game, and then I'll go to sleep. And it's not like the same day is like that every day, but that's many of my days.
Yes, that's the indication of a good Saturn, that because Saturn gets exalted in Libra. So many times people ask this question that I cannot balance things in life. Once sometimes, my career goes on the higher end, sometimes my relationships, sometimes my health, my social life. So that's the test of a good Saturn. Are you able to balance the different areas of your life? Are you able to do justice to the respective areas of your life, or are you not? To the extent you are not, to that extent Saturn is spoiled in your chart. And that is why I always keep saying, sometimes people ask, oh, my Saturn is placed here, there, with this planet, aspected by that planet. How is my Saturn? Can you tell me? Then I tell them it's very simple. Just check these points.
Yeah.
Are you able to balance your life? I don't care your Saturn is in Libra or it is in Aries. If you are not able to balance, then it is debilitated. Maybe due to some reason. There are something related to divisional charts, or the exaltation is under threat or something like that. But that's the point which I'm stressing, that you cannot say that my Saturn is in Libra, so I'm perfect in all these areas. Maybe you are good at it, but you need to check in reality.
Navamsha.
Yeah, Navamsha or whichever divisional chart, but first we check on your real life, because suppose you never knew astrology,
Mhm.
then how would you judge Saturn? This is the way you would judge.
Right.
So that's about Saturn.
That was excellent. Thank you for sharing that,
Yeah, thank you
Thomas.
also for sharing.
Om Namah Shivaya, Om Pram Prim Pram Sahashanaischaraya Namaha.